Hello, Bible scholars. Happy Friday. Happy Good Friday. Welcome back to Oops, It's a Bible Channel. Oops, because nothing says for I'm not ashamed of the gospel quite like that does. I'm just your fellow student, Leah Nicole, and today we're going to be talking about the most important story in all of human history. Now, of course, this is much more than just a story. But for the purposes of this video, I'm going to tell it like a narrative. I want you to imagine with me as we go through this story together and connect emotionally with it. And I'm going to try to keep my voice even because that would be embarrassing if I cried during the video. But for this to work, you're going to have to play along with me and you're going to have to imagine as well. Okay, so imagine you're one of Jesus' disciples. You've been following him around. You've been listening to his teachings for 3 years. You've been seeing him do miracles. You've been watching him do all kinds of things, cross boundaries that people weren't willing to cross before. And you just finished having the Passover with your rabbi, Jesus, and the rest of his students. Now, this dinner started weird whenever Jesus bent down and washed your stinky, smelly feet as if he was some sort of servant. And then he told you to serve others the same way he just did. So that was really strange that he would wash your feet and then tell you to do the same thing. And then, of course, Peter, trying to be some sort of show off, at first doesn't let Jesus do it and then asks that he wash his entire body. But after that, and it doesn't get any better because he says one of you is going to betray him. One of you. One of the people who has been following him around for years and has devoted so much time and energy and dedication to him. But apparently, one of you guys sitting in the room is going to betray him. How? We don't know. Who? He didn't say. He told John who was sitting next to him, but he didn't actually say. Then he tells you that the most important thing you can do is show love to each other, which he's said that kind of thing before, so not that crazy. But then he said that Peter was going to deny him before the rooster crowed the next morning. Peter? Really? That confuses you for sure. Peter, who was the only one to go try to walk on water with Jesus. Peter is also the one who said that Jesus was the Christ, the Son of God. So, why would he pick Peter? Then he starts talking as if this is going to be the last time you're going to see him. He starts talking about he is God and how he's the only way to be saved. And he also starts trying to comfort you and tell you that things are going to be rough and that he has to fulfill something. And so this whole dinner has been really weird. And then Judas just kind of left. So you're done with the dinner and Jesus is taking his 3 favorites, Peter, James, and John, to the garden to go pray. He's prayed in the garden before. So you decide, maybe you shouldn't have, but you decided that you were going to go and follow and see what's going on. When you get there, it's kind of disturbing. Jesus is laying face down on the ground, praying hard, sweating. Is that blood? And Peter, James, and John are over there just sleeping. Of course, you don't want to disturb Jesus while he's praying, and you don't want to wake up the disciples because then they'll know you're there, so you just kind of watch. Jesus wakes them up, and then they fall asleep again a couple times, and then you start to hear marching, and you see some torches. People have come to arrest Jesus. And guess who was at the front of the pack? It was Judas. Was he the one who was going to betray Jesus? So you keep watching. And then something kind of weird happens. Judas leaves the front of the group, goes up, greets Jesus, and kisses him. But for some reason, the kiss feels like it's more than just a greeting like it normally would be. Something about it feels really wrong, and you don't know why. And then the rest of the soldiers move in to arrest Jesus. And then you see Peter slice off a servant's ear. But then Jesus just heals it. So, impulsive Peter, what can you say? And then Jesus gets taken away. He doesn't fight very much. He says something, but I can't quite make out what it was. But he just goes with them. He doesn't try to fight them off or anything like that. And at first, you just kind of want to turn away as if it didn't happen. You kind of want to push it from your mind, but then you notice that Peter is following from a distance, so you decide to follow Peter. Peter joins a group of people at a fire, and you hear them start to talk a little bit. And Peter looks like he's defensive and scared for some reason. Probably just because his teacher just got arrested, and so he might be too. But at one point, you hear him yell and swear and say, "I don't know him." And then the rooster crows. And then you see Jesus walk by and look at Peter. And then Peter starts weeping. And then you realize Peter did what Jesus said Peter was going to do. That must have been what was said every time. And then something terrible happens. As they pull Jesus away, they start mocking him and beating him, making fun of him, and just being terrible to him. You see Jesus go before the council, which is supposed to be a very reasonable council and following God's judgment. But they seem to be going a little bit crazy almost. Jesus gets questioned, and then the priest tears his robe, and then they bring him to the governor of the area, Pilate, as if they wanted to do worse than what the Jews were allowed to do. And then you follow as Jesus is taken from the Jewish council over to the governor, Pilate. And then they accuse Jesus of misleading people and telling people they can't pay taxes. And then Pilate asks him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And Jesus says, "You have said so." And Pilate finds no fault in him, but then the Jews start saying that he stirs everything up. So you follow again as Jesus gets moved again and is tried before Herod, who of course is in Jerusalem. And at first you feel hopeful because Herod seems happy to meet Jesus and almost amused. And Herod questions Jesus, but he doesn't say anything. And the chief priests keep accusing him just like they did with Pilate. And Herod's soldiers are mocking him and beating him. And then it's just worse whenever Herod puts him in these fine garments and just sends him back to Pilate. Clearly Herod doesn't think he did anything wrong either, but he isn't stopping any of this. So then everyone travels back over to Pilate. Pilate has Jesus flogged and whipped. Pilate reminds them that Pilate didn't find him guilty before, and Herod didn't because he just sent him back. But they keep accusing him again and again, and Jesus doesn't really answer anything, just like with Herod. But then you get a little bit of hope whenever Pilate offers up a seemingly reasonable compromise. It is Passover, and there's a tradition where on Passover, a prisoner is released. So they can choose between Barabbas, a murderer and an upriser, or Jesus, who didn't actually do anything wrong. But to your horror, they start chanting that they would rather have Barabbas. And then you're hoping Pilate will speak up, but instead you see him wash his hands and say that Jesus' blood isn't on his hands, as if that helps anything. And he's being mocked as he's flogged. Your heart is just ripped into pieces as you watch the man you've been following also get ripped into pieces. And so Jesus, bloody, broken, mocked, and bruised, gets even more insult by having his clothes taken away from him. And they even cast lots. They rolled dice for his cloak, which was one of the only nice things he had. Then they forced Jesus to carry a giant cross. You've walked past people being crucified on crosses before, and it's for prisoners. It's for people who have done truly wrong things, not Jesus, who never did anything wrong. Jesus, who preached love and helped people understand God's word and what he was expecting of them. Not Jesus, who clearly at least was connected to God through all the miracles that he did. It seemed wrong. But then Jesus falls down over and over again. And eventually one of the Roman soldiers makes a man you've seen before, Simon, help Jesus carry his cross up the hill to Golgotha, the hill of the skull. And people are following Jesus, weeping and mourning, and you're one of them. But then Jesus turns around and has a little bit more to say. He tells you not to weep for him, but instead to weep for yourselves, because apparently bad things are going to happen. When Jesus finally brings the cross up the hill, he is nailed down to it, and every single strike of the hammer onto the nail drives a nail through your own heart and sends shivers down your own spine. Then you see a sign nailed to the cross. It says, "Behold, the King of the Jews," which is just worse because he's mocked. And then you notice the crown of thorns that was shoved into his head. Jesus is hung between two actual criminals, and you see them talking to each other, so you get closer to hear what they're saying. One of them is mocking Jesus, telling him that if he's God, why doesn't he save them and himself? But then the other one says the truth, which is that Jesus has done nothing wrong. And Jesus turns to that man, and you hear him say, "Today you will be with me in paradise." And so you feel happy for the other guy, and glad yourself that you followed Jesus. Then you hear him turn to John, one of his favorites, and say that he is supposed to take care of Jesus' mother, Mary, as if he was her son. Jesus says he's thirsty, and so someone brings him a sponge full of nasty smelling wine. It must have been mixed with something. And he's hanging there for hours and hours and hours, while people are mocking him and telling him to just get down if he is the Son of God. And then you hear Jesus cry the beginning of a psalm that you yourself have learned for when things are difficult. He says, "Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani." My God, why have you forsaken me? And those words bring chills. And then it goes dark for 3 whole hours. And then Jesus says, "It is finished." The same words people use for when a payment has been fulfilled or when a punishment has been filled out. And then Jesus says one last thing very loudly. You can see the pain on his face as he tries to pull himself up to take a breath to say, "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit." He's giving up his own spirit. And then you feel an earthquake. You hear rocks breaking apart. Someone runs in saying that the veil in the temple has been ripped in half. And then you hear someone else saying that the graves are open, and you see people who you thought had died, but there they are walking around. And so now, of course, you're confused. And then the rich man, Joseph of Arimathea, go take the body. And then with Nicodemus, who had talked to Jesus previously, wrap him and give him the burial of a king. Tons of aloe and embalming spices and wrappings. And then they put him in a tomb that nobody had been laid in yet. Then the tomb is sealed and has guards put in front of it. That way the body can't be taken. And now you feel like that's the end. You feel like it's been a failure. The man you thought was the Messiah, who you thought was supposed to overthrow Rome and be victorious, is dead. You must have been wrong. Surely this couldn't have been the real Messiah. You mourn for 3 whole days with the people who you've been traveling with and learning from Jesus with. And then, 3 days later, women come running and telling everybody that Jesus is alive. And at first, you just can't believe it. And then, you see Peter and John go and run over to the tomb, so you're running behind them. John beats Peter, which is hilarious. And then John stops right in front of the tomb, but Peter keeps running and goes into the tomb. And says, it is, in fact, empty. Jesus must have raised from the dead. There's no other explanation. There's no other explanation. You were with the other disciples. They wouldn't have taken his body out. And obviously the women couldn't have moved the stone. So that's the only explanation, is that Jesus has risen from the dead. And then later this is confirmed when Jesus shows up in the room with you and his other disciples. For 40 days you get to talk with him again and learn from him again. And you get to eat with him again and walk with him again as he explains to you how what happened fulfilled everything that you learned from scriptures from growing up. And then Jesus takes you as far as Bethany and tells you to go tell everybody about him and to baptize them. And then you see him go up into the clouds. And then you and the rest of the disciples just stand there in awe, just wondering what just happened, what's going to happen next. Is he going to come back down? And then an angel appears and tells you to stop just standing around, go do what he said, because he's going to come back down the same way he went up on the clouds. So then you run as far as Jerusalem with them, praising God the entire way, telling everybody you come across. Now it's time to transition into the meta world of actually being in the real world. Now, if you'd like to know a little more big picture why that had to happen and kind of what that means, then I have a video for you that explains that part of it. This video was to go into more detail and connect emotionally to put you in that place. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a like. That way I can know you enjoyed this video and do more like it. If you like my videos in general and would like to see more of them and know when they come out, the easiest way and the best way to do that is to subscribe and then make sure notifications are on. That way you always know when a new video comes out. If you have a different Bible story you want me to talk about, or a different Bible passage you want me to break down, or just a different topic in general you want me to discuss, or if you have questions, then go ahead and comment those so I can see them and make a video about it if it calls for that. Or if not, just answer it in the next comment. Alright, that's all I have for you for today. I wish a great Easter for all of you. Remember, focus on Jesus this Easter season. That is what this season is about, of course. God bless you all, and I will see you next Friday. Read your Bibles.